All right, good morning, all four of you. We're going to be going through online videos for the time being. This week, my plan is I'm going to make them short, but I want to review. We're going to go over today, we're going to go over proportion test, then we'll go over small sample, and then we'll go over test of variance. And my goal is to keep them short as we go through. Just a reminder, for proportion tests, we're going to state our null alternative hypothesis. We're going to define our test procedure. That is, we're going to use a z-score for the proportion test. So we'll go to our chart. Again, I'll show it to you. We're going to collect the data. I should also point out the z-score on Classroom. That's going to be available to you. You'll see the chart, so you'll have all that you'll need. You won't need your books. I'm going to make it all online. All of the stuff will be worksheets and PDF files for you. We're going to collect the data. Just to point out a couple things. When we talk about the p-hat, that's our sample proportion. So we're going to go sample proportion. All right, p, just p, that's our from the population. So that would be our population proportion. N is still our sample size. N will show up in each one of these. N will still be sample size. We'll reject sample, there you go, size. We'll reject or not reject, that stays the same. We're going to go through three examples of this because this is the one that we haven't gone through yet. So we'll do those three. The other two videos, they'll just have two examples each on how to go about it. And then you'll have the worksheet to do. So we'll start with going through this one. So just a reminder, p-hat is our sample, and p is our population. So first example that we'll go through, nearly 1/3 of teens polled by Teenage Research Limited said they have been personally affected by the recession. Where do teens get their money? We wish to test the hypothesis to test whether half, so we want to see if half of all, or 50% of all teens get money from their parents. So we want to test, do they get it or not get it? So that tells me right there it's going to be our null, will be our proportion equals 50%. You could say 50% or 0.5. Either way. So our alternative will be that they don't get 50%. So we'll go through that. Next thing is, they say it's an alpha value of 0.05. Because it's a two-tailed test, we're going to have to divide by 2. So we're looking for a z-score, okay? And we're going to divide alpha, so 0.05, divide by 2. So we're going to look it up at 0.025. And then this is it's a bell curve, so it's going to be equal on either side. So next, I'll show you the chart that we're going to use. So this is the chart that I've given you. Now, we're using z-scores, so z-critical values. So we're going to use this here. We divided our alpha value by 2, so it gave us 0.025. So we go all the way down to the z-score of 1.96. So we know that we're going to test 1.96, negative 1.96. I think in most of our examples I give you alpha value of 0.05. But that's a chart that we're going to be using. The only thing is that you have to remember is we're going down to where the z value is. So then we go from there, we got to go ahead and our sample. Okay, so we have a sample of 1,000. Once again, we're going to go our sample proportion, so 0.47 minus our population divided by the square root of our population, 0.50, then minus 1 minus 0.50, and then we go divided by the square root of our sample size, which is 1,000. Now, just to point out one thing, 0.5 and then 1 minus 0.5, this is just going to equal 0.5 again. So just know that these two have to add the 1. So when you do that, when we go ahead and subtract that, we're going to get negative 1. This equals negative 1.897. So then I compare that to this value? Is it to the left of it? Is this value smaller than that? No, so we do not reject. Okay, so we wanted to test to see whether half or 50% of all teens get some money from their parents. We do not reject, saying there's no significant difference between the sample and what we got, so we'd say yes. The evidence suggests students do get some money from parents. And there is no significant difference. So when you do not reject, we're saying no significant difference. Second example that we'll go to. So just a reminder, we're going to use that again, so I'll keep it on the screen for us to use. Okay, so we're still going to go ahead. All right, so we want to find, based on a telephone survey, 3,533 randomly selected adults use email recently found that 31% find email easier way to say frank or unpleasant things. Is there enough evidence that more than 30%? So that's our null right there. So our null is that it's more than, so we're going to say P is less than or equal to 30%. And our alternative is that P is greater than 30%. It's a one-tailed test, so we want to test to see if it's more than 30%, so it's going to be an upper tail test of 0.05. So we're just looking up here, alpha value 0.05. Once again, you go to your chart. This is a z-score. So we're using this chart once again. It's an upper tail test. So we're not going to divide our alpha value by 2. We go all the way down. So 0.05 down to our z-score. Our z-score is 1.645. And it's an upper tail test because we're seeing it more than. So now we'll go from there. So once again, we'll take our sample proportion. So I recently found that 31%, so of this 3,533, 31%, so we go 0.31 minus our population of 30%, divided by the square root of our population, 0.30. And then again, we're going to go minus 0.3, so 1 minus 0.30, divided by, and our sample size of 3,533. So that's all underneath it. Now, again, I just point out to you, 1 minus 0.3, that's 0.7. So that's what I put in. When you get that, that is equal to 1.3. So I compare this value to this value. Is this value greater or to the right of this value? No, so we do not reject. So once again, there is no significant difference between our sample and our population. So is there evidence that more than 30%? We'd say no. Okay? Do not reject. There is not enough evidence that more than 30% 30% of those who send or who use email communicate unpleasant things. All right, so this there you go. This right here is the most important thing. This is where most of you guys like to short it and say reject or not reject. But this right here, the second part, what is this evidence actually suggesting? What are we actually going to? So make sure you put in that last part as well. So last example that we'll go through, for sample proportion. So a study published by the New England Journal of Medicine said that cigarette makers who have maintained a high level of spending for magazine ad targets middle and high school. So sample of 200 teenagers found 82% of them were reached by the ads. Here's our sample, so that's our sample proportion. Ads reach 88%, that's our population. Is there enough evidence to conclude the proportion of teenagers being reached has decreased from 88%? So if it's decreased, we're going to assume the opposite. So we'd say our proportion has gone up. It's greater than or equal to 88%. And our alternative is that it's less than 88%. So again, this right here has decreased. There's a one-tailed test because it's greater than or less than. So we want to see if it's decreased, so we know it's going to be a lower tail test of 0.05. So we know it's going to be a negative value because it's to the left. Again, you use the chart, and you'll see it's the same as what we just had, last one. So we go through here, 0.05, 1.645. So it's negative 1.645. So that's what we're going to use as we check it to see. Next, we're going to go ahead and do it. So our sample proportion is 82% minus our population of 88%. Divided by 0.88, our population. Again, 1 minus 0.18, or 1 minus 88 is 0.12. Okay, divided by our sample size. Our sample size was 200. And if we do that, we get it equal to negative 2.6. So, is this value less than that value or to the left of it? Yes. So now, we reject. So, is there enough evidence to suggest that the proportion of teenagers being reached has decreased? Yes. So, the evidence that the we'd say yes, this is the case. The evidence suggests that the proportion of teenagers being reached has indeed decreased. So just make sure as you work through it, we're stating this, make sure you're going through your 5 steps, null and alternative hypothesis. Okay, we want to see what's our alpha value, what's that value that we're looking through, come up with your test statistic, and then tell me reject or not reject, and then explain out what that means. What's the consequence of it?